Okay, so this morning's class is sponsored in memory of Billy Mizrahi, one of our founders, Yitzhak ben Bahia, and it's sponsored by Gary Mizrahi. So that's all classes this week. So we've been talking about, yeah, good. Okay, we've been talking about the concept of Muktzeh, and hopefully today we're going to just deal with some random cases. And that'll be the last we'll do of Muktzeh, and tomorrow we'll talk about carrying on Shabbat. So here we go. So let's start. We had the last thing that we had said was talking about a car and whether or not you could drive. Not whether you could drive, whether or not you could open the door of a car if no light went on. So now we're talking about a different piece, which is some cars have a cover to them to protect them from the sun, the rain, or something. So he says that you're allowed to take the cover on and off of the car. So he prefers that you don't, because when you take a cover off a car, people are going to look at you, and they're walking by, they're going to say, "Oh, he's driving his car." So for that purpose, he recommends not, but it's not forbidden to do, because the car itself is not really Muktzeh, because you can't move it without driving it. But I mean, you can't physically move it, and also the cover. There's nothing forbidden about the cover. It's allowed. There's nothing. There's no reason you can't cover something or not. So it's not a utensil that the cover itself that's Muktzeh. So therefore, it's allowed. Okay.
Yes. Why would someone want to do that anyway?
Again, let's say I have an antique car or something, right? And sometimes it's going to rain, it's going to be sunny, and I forgot to cover it from before Shabbat. So it could be that you have to, could be you have a reason to cover it. Could be you left the window open in the car, right? And it's going to, not an antique car or something like that. I mean, you could ask yourself, what do you need to cover a car for in the first place, right? But if there's a need, so in theory, it's not forbidden. Okay. Next thing that he talks about is a Swiss Army knife. He says, so a Swiss Army knife has a lot of different parts to it. And some of the things that a Swiss Army knife would have would be not usable on Shabbat. Their primary purpose would be for something that you can't use, like like a scissor or a saw, right? Like a lot of the Swiss Army knives have that.
Didn't he already cover that already?
So I think we talked about it, but
as an example.
Yeah, I think we talked about, but here he's saying it explicitly. So given that I think we did talk about it, because we said sometimes to have a screwdriver, but this item, the Swiss Army knife, definitely has things that are usable, like a spoon or a fork or a knife, a toothpick, things like that are non-problematic. He says, so since you could use the permissible item, so you could pick up the whole thing. Now, obviously, I can't take out the screwdriver and start screwing in nails, but the object itself is not Muktzeh because it has permissible items with it. Okay. So he says a keychain, right? Let's say you have a keychain, and the key is not so different, right? The keychain maybe has something on it that's problematic, right? So what might be the things that it has that are problematic? Well, the thing that he uses as an example is, I haven't seen this, but I guess people have this, a nail clipper, right? You can't clip your nails on Shabbat. It says, but if it's the keychain, and you use the keys for opening your house or something like that, so it's going to be okay, right? So now, obviously, the question is, what about if it has your car, your car key on it or something like that? Or today, the keychains have, a lot of electric bells, whistles, things like that. So a key, what could happen is that that key can become Muktzeh Mahmat Chisaron Kis. It could be something that you would only use for that purpose. It's expensive, and so on. So you might not be allowed to do that. So so that you would take off the keychain from before Shabbat, or take your key off of that from before Shabbat. You shouldn't carry that. You shouldn't have that carrying it around on Shabbat. And I would say that's true for more and more keys these days. That they're specific. If you have like if you have a car key and you misplace it, right? It's hundreds of dollars to get a new one. So I would say that's in the category of Muktzeh Mahmat Chisaron keys. Okay, next item that he's going to talk about is paper, right? So let's start with a notebook, right? It says if you have a notebook that's a blank notebook, there's nothing written in it. He says, so that notebook is Muktzeh, because what's the purpose of that notebook? It's just to write it, right? There's not really any other purpose that you can have. So you can't pick it up. It's Muktzeh. He says, but if you have a notebook that is written in, right? Meaning I took notes in it, I wrote something down, whatever it may be, so that you could read from it, right? So could be I have notes on the class that I'm going to give on Shabbat, or I had some thoughts that I was going to give over on the parasha on the table, or something, I don't know, you wrote a short story to be read at some point, anything like that. So now the notebook becomes allowed, right? So you don't have to say that since there's even if there's empty pages in it, even many empty pages in it, even in the overwhelming majority of empty pages in it, once there's something written in it, it makes it, kind of like a book, and therefore it's no problem, and you'd be able to do it. The only thing that I would say would be an exception to that is if it's when I say written in it, would be, let's say you use it simply to doodle in, or something like that. So then that would be a problem, because the doodling, you're not looking at the doodling. It's just for, it's just for writing. So it's kind of like a blank notebook. Also, if the things that are written in it are things that you can't do on Shabbat, right? Like, for example, let's say I write down all the sales that I make, in this book. Well, then I can't use it, because the whole purpose of the book is for business purposes and to do business on Shabbat and so on. And so we don't want to be doing that. Okay. Same thing with a pad, right? If you have a notepad, Post-its, things like that, all those are Muktzeh, because the whole point of that is to write, and so there's nothing on it. He says also, we don't really use these anymore, but in Israel this used to be big. Right? I don't know if you remember, they used to have like airmail letters, right? I think all mail goes by the air today, so I don't know that it's such a chidush, but they used to have in Israel, they used to have, like, you would buy from the post office. They had it in America too. You bought an airmail letter, and like it folded up, and it was pre-stamped. You guys know what I'm talking about, or no? Yeah. So those are Muktzeh, because the purpose of that is to write something on, right? However, if you received the letter, right, and you opened it and you want to read it, it's a nice birthday wish or something like that. So then it would be okay. All right. Next item is a button, right? Let's say I have a button on my shirt, on my jacket, on my pants. So he says, if the button is not yet attached, right? So the button that has not been attached, it's Muktzeh, because it has no purpose other than to be sewn on to something. So a button is Muktzeh. It says, but what if the button was on my jacket and now it fell off, right? So he says it's not Muktzeh, and you could put it on the side somewhere, because it has the use of being a button on your clothing. And he says you could take it and you could move it somewhere, and so on. Okay, next, any kind of feathers, hairs, any kind of something that's on your clothing, like lint, he says it's not Muktzeh, and you could take it off. He says, but once you take it off, then it becomes Muktzeh. It's like a worthless nothing, right? So let's say there's a hair or a feather or a piece of lint. I could take it off my clothing, but once I take it off, it becomes Muktzeh Mahmat Gufo. There's no purpose to it, and it's not allowed to be used. Okay. He says, let's say you have a utensil let's say you bought new glasses, forks, knives, spoons, things that need to go to the mikveh before you use them, and you haven't yet taken them to the mikveh. So kind of, you can't really use it yet. Right? He says it doesn't matter. It's still not muktzeh. It's okay. Not a problem. Because there are certain ways that you would be able to use it. What's the next thing? Okay, an umbrella. He says an umbrella is muktzeh. As we said about when we did the laws of Bnei, building, so umbrellas that are rain umbrellas, sun umbrellas that we carry, personal umbrellas, they are not allowed to be used. They are, and since they're not allowed to be used, they're muktzeh. So you can't, not only can I not walk outside with the umbrella, I can't even in my house take the umbrella and say, I don't like where that is in the closet. Let me move it to somewhere else. I can't do that. Okay, next halacha. So he says, Kli shemelachto leheter, or afilu melachto gam lisur v'gam leheter, mutar letalto lekol tzorach shehu, ben letzorach gufo, kedei l'shtamesh bo miyad, o kedei sheyeh muchan l'shimush meuchar yoter, ben letzorach mekovo, ben letzorach shmirato, shelo yikalkel v'lo yovad, וכן מותר לטלטלו כאשר נהנה מעצם הטלטול וההתעסקות בכלי אף ללא שימוש ממשי, אבל אסור לטלטלו לא לשום צורך. He says, so now there's such a thing as kli shemelachto leheter, something that has a positive purpose, right? So what's something that has a positive purpose? A fork, right? What's the purpose? The main purpose is to eat. Eating is allowed, no problem, right? What's another item that's a utensil that's a positive purpose? My shirt, right? My shirt is a utensil from the standpoint of halacha. I could wear it. It's got a positive purpose. A book, right? I want to read from it. No problem. All these things, he says, you're allowed to move them. There's no problem. You could take it here, there, and anywhere. If you have any purpose for it, including, I don't like where that is, right? Like let's say there's a picture frame, and I there's no problem with the picture in a picture frame, right? And I don't like it on that shelf. I want it on another shelf. No problem to move it. All the things, the forks, I want to switch my meat drawer with my dairy drawer. No problem. I can move it, something like that. He says, however, even these things, you can't move for absolutely no purpose, right? So I'm not exactly sure what absolutely no purpose would be, but for absolutely no purpose, you can't move those things. He says, except for the following three things that even for absolutely no purpose you can move. One, religious books, a siddur, a chumash, a gemara, or something like that. Two, food. Three, any kind of jewelry, any kind of earrings, rings, necklace, something like that. Any of those three things, even for absolutely no purpose, you can move them. So I'm not really sure what would be a situation where you move something for absolutely no purpose, right? Because usually you have a purpose, but if there's absolutely no purpose, so then I guess we wouldn't move things even that are allowed. So I guess be purposeful. מי שרוצה לקחת חפץ במלבושו של יום חול, מסופק ומונח בכיס כסף או שאר מוקצה, אם זה ספק השקול אם יש בתוכו דבר מוקצה מחמת גופו, אסור להושיט ידו לתוך הכיס, אבל אם הרוב נוטה שאין בו מוקצה, או אם יש רק מוקצה מחמת איסור, מותר להושיט ידו לכיס. He says, let's say you have a situation where you have, I have a jacket hanging on the hook, right? And in my jacket, I have something in my pocket that I know I need, right? Like keys, right? I know I need my keys. I'm leaving the house and I want to be able to lock the door and come back and unlock the door. No problem with those things, right? It says, but in that pocket, I know also I have some other things, right? So maybe I left my phone in that pocket, right? So perhaps I'm going to end up moving that item. So he says, so first of all, do you know that you have something there or not? He says, if you know you have something there, he says it could be a problem because then you're going to move the other thing too, and you can't move the other thing unless in the permissible way. So that could be a problem. But if you're not sure if it's there, then it's not a problem, because if it's just a doubt, so a doubt, you could be lenient on it. He says all this, of course, is talking about an object that would be the problematic object of something that I can't move it at all, even for its place, right? So it has to be Muktzeh Mahmat Chisaron Kis, meaning an expensive item, an item that I wouldn't use for any purpose, like my phone, like we talked about money, right? So those things are problematic. But if it's something that I could move if I need the space, like a klisha machtola isur, like a hammer, like a nail, like a screwdriver, so it's not a problem because I can move those things if I need that space anyway. Okay, a couple of more things. So we have a child took in his hand something that's muktzeh, right? A child picked up something that's muktzeh. He says, Al yomar lo aviv rak shikachehu v'yanichehu b'makom yishtamishtamer, ela yig'ar bo v'yomar lo ech tiltalta davar asur telech v'tanichehu b'makom ploni. He says, so what should you do, right? You should tell the child, listen, it's Shabbat. You can't have that item. Go put it away somewhere, and maybe you could just direct the kid where to put it away, right? If the kid picked up his iPad, right? So you could say, we don't use the iPad on Shabbat. Take the iPad and put it in your closet, right? Don't have the kid put it down right where it is, and then it's sitting in your face and you don't want it there, and then maybe it's going to break and then you're going to move it. So you don't want to do that. So you should tell the kid, it's Shabbat. We can't use that on Shabbat. We can't carry that on Shabbat. So take it and put it away. Stop what you're doing and put it away. Okay. He says, Yeladim shemischakim ba'avanim shehem muktzeh. He says children that maybe they're playing with a rocks, dirt, something like that we said in muktzeh. He says we should also tell them, listen, it's muktzeh to use that. This is how muktzeh works. We should make an opportunity of it and teach the children not to do it, and then they put it down right where it is, assuming it's outside or something like that. You don't want them playing with it. If it's inside, chances are someone set it aside for something anyway, and it's less of a problem. So those are all the laws of Muktzeh. They're a lot. They're complicated. They are certainly worth reviewing from time to time in order to know what to do. But the basic, idea, which we'll go back on, is the idea of Muktzeh is basically to keep us in Shabbat mode. We want to stay away from carrying things, moving things that are going to either have us do work or have us be in non-Shabbat mode because we're touching, holding, moving things that are for non-Shabbat activities or for no purpose that's productive on Shabbat. So that's the basic idea, and that's the story with Muktzeh. Any questions? Any thoughts? Any comments?
Yeah, Rabbi, just because I missed it, what's the bottom line, the halakha, if it's like a keychain with a pocket knife, or if it's a pocket knife, a Swiss Army knife in general? What was the rule?
No problem. So again, if this pocket knife, if it has multiple things and some of them are positive and you want to use them for the positive, no problem. In terms of it as a keychain, so the same thing would apply. Right now, what we did talk about is certain keychains, like my keychain may be a nail clipper, right? Or a Swiss Army knife that has only forbidden things. I had once like a keychain that was a pen, a highlighter, and an eraser. So all three of those things are forbidden on Shabbat, right? So he says, look, if it's attached to the keychain, so it's going to be okay because the key, if it's attached to the key, so the key is permissible, so you're allowed to move it. But he really recommends not, because when you have that, you're gonna. If you're used to writing with it, you're going to write with it. You might write with it. So you'd want to be careful with that. Now, that's right. All on pedestrian items, but if it's an expensive item, right? Like if my keychain is a it's a $300 car remote, So now it goes into this other category of Muktzeh Mahmat Chisaron Kis, and that is not batel. It does not. We don't look at it and say, oh, you have something permissible with it, so it's going to be okay. So it's a problem, and you really should detach it from that.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. We're going to stop here with the class. Minyan is in 7 minutes, so I'll be back for Minyan. And that's it. Anyone have any questions, thoughts, comments?
That's it. Zaka Baruch,
Okay.
and good luck with everything that's going on today.
Amen.
Thank you.
Shkula mitzvah
Tomorrow,
to your son and refuah shlema.
Amen.
thank you. Amen. And tomorrow we're going to start talking about the concept of carrying. So we'll get to that. That's a
Thank
complicated
you.
one.
Have a great
Have a
day.
great day, everybody. Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay,
Good
take care.
luck.
Take care.